Hey there, Happy New Year. It's the first week of January 2026. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year, but that also means it's time for the monthly Cape Coral real estate market update video. I do one of these every single month. If you're unfamiliar with these, we're going to really dive into the statistics and the facts and the figures of the Cape Coral real estate market. Specifically, we're going to be looking at numbers that were put up this last month, so December of 2025. We're going to look at the sales data, we'll look at the median price, we'll look at the inventory levels, all of that great stuff. I'll give you kind of a broad overview of what the entire market's doing, and then we'll really dive in and break these down into several different categories. We'll look at off-water single-family homes. Of course, we'll look at Gulf access homes. We'll look at condos and townhomes, and we'll look at vacant residential lots. And then I'm going to wrap this video up with some advice if maybe you're a current buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, as well as some advice if maybe you're a seller in the current Cape Coral real estate market. Make sure you stick around to the end for that. I do have chapters down there if you want to jump around. These are usually a little bit longer and drier videos, but there's a lot of really great information in here if you are interested in the Cape Coral real estate market. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a longtime resident of Cape Coral, and I've been a full-time real estate broker here for almost 20 years now. I do one of these videos every month where we really dive into the stats of the Cape Coral real estate market, but these are in addition to the weekly videos I put out where I just try to give you a lot of great information, solve a lot of problems for you. Sometimes we're looking at some fun real estate, so I think you'll get a lot out of these videos if you watch them. And if you are interested in Cape Coral in Southwest Florida, or maybe you're considering moving to Cape Coral or moving to Fort Myers, or maybe you live here now and you just want to keep up to speed on everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you around for these videos every week, and I think you'll get a lot of useful and great information out of them. And also my contact information, of course, is right there on the screen if you do have a need for real estate here in Southwest Florida, anywhere, if you're buying or selling a place. Definitely reach out to me. I would love to help you out with that. But beyond all that, let's get into this market report. I always start off these market reports with showing you, just for fun, the highest and the lowest sales of the month. And so again, we're talking about December 2025. So let's start off with the lowest sales in a few different categories for the entire city of Cape Coral for December of 2025. All right, so the lowest sales in the entire city of Cape Coral for the month of December 2025. I'm going to give you a few different categories, as I always do. We'll start off with the lowest condo sale that happened last month. We've been talking about condos a lot the last few months, and the opportunity is there. You can even get condos under $100,000 these days, which is really incredible. Condos have just really taken it on the chin. The prices have come way down on condos more than any other category that we have here in Cape Coral. And so let's look at the lowest condo sale. You know, there were 4 condos last month that sold under $100,000, but this one was the lowest one. This one, 2504 Southeast 16th Place, Unit 104. That's in the Everest condo complex. It's over there off of Veterans Parkway in Del Prado in the Southeast Cape. This property was listed at $85,000. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1981, just under 1,100 square feet. It looked like it was in foreclosure. This is a 55 and older community, which kind of makes sense. They're generally priced a little bit less than the non-55 and older communities, but this one needed some work in there. It was partially updated. It's just pretty dirty, needed some repairs. Was on the first floor over there, and but overall not too terrible bad condition, just dirty and needed a little bit of work there. But it was listed at $85,000 and sold in just 2 weeks. 15 days for $70,000 cash. $70,000, that's the lowest condo sale I think we've seen in a fair number of months. And again, 4 condos this past month sold under $100,000. So definitely some opportunities out there for condos. If you are in the market, especially maybe if you're a first-time home buyer, the opportunities are there for these condos. And even though the fees are a little bit higher these days, you can get a really good price on a decent condo and kind of get into this real estate market. But $70,000 sold on December 16th for all cash sale. Congrats to the buyers and the sellers on the lowest condo sale of the month. It's the overall lowest residential sale as well. Let's look at the lowest single family home that sold here in the city of Cape Coral last month. That's this one in the northeast section of Cape Coral, 1317 Northeast 15th Terrace. That's just off of Diplomat Parkway and Del Prado Boulevard there in the northeast. This is an area where the central utilities are coming in. The city of Cape Coral's utility extension project is going into this area right now. So a lot of these homes are getting hit with those assessments, and as such, it's forcing a few people to go ahead and sell and get out from underneath these properties. But this one at 1317 Northeast 15th Terrace was listed at $169,900. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1986. This is a wood frame home too. It's not a concrete block home, so these wood frame homes tend to be a little bit less expensive, so it makes sense that this was the lowest sale. But this sold, it was on the market for 208 days, so it was there for a while, but it finally did sell at $145,000 on conventional financing on December 15th, and there was a $40,000 assessment balance on this, and that roof looked pretty old as well, so it needed some flooring. It needs a few updates in there, probably needed a new roof. And again, when you're walking into a $40,000 assessment balance, you can see why that would cause the price to come down a fair amount. But $145,000, it's pretty good, even for a wood frame home anywhere in the city of Cape Coral. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. $145,000 was the lowest single-family home that we saw sell last month. All right, let's do a fun one real quick. This is the lowest Gulf access home sale of the entire month of December. And this time we're in the Southeast, 407 Southeast 34th Terrace. It's just south of Veterans Parkway by the Country Club area. And, this wasn't too terribly far to open water. It was still about 45 minutes, though, so a little bit farther to open water. Was listed at $314,000. It sold in 4 days for $315,000 cash. It sold over list price. I'm telling you, when these Gulf access homes get under that $400,000 mark, they tend to go very, very quickly. There were 2 homes last month that sold under $400,000. There was this one at $315,000, and then actually a foreclosure that I had listed that also had some damage that we had listed at, I think we were at $355,000 on that one, and that one ended up getting bid up and sold at $371,000. So I'm telling you, once you get, even for these damaged properties, if they're on a Gulf access canal, if they're under $400,000, especially when they have a pool like this one does, they tend to sell very, very quickly. But this one was a VA foreclosure. It was owned by the Veterans Administration. Still had some hurricane damage from Hurricane Ian, so it's been sitting there in rough shape for a long, long time. It needed a new roof, some intense rehab inside. Looks like it might even had some mold issues in there, but it does have a pool and a dock and a lift, and it looks down that nice canal there in the Southeast. So $315,000, and you're getting pretty darn close to lot value when you're talking about that. So it's still a really, really good purchase in spite of all the things that needed to happen to this one. But it did sell for all cash, unsurprisingly, at $315,000 in just 4 days. So congrats to the buyers on that one. That's a really good purchase over there in the Southeast Cape. All right, that takes care of our lowest sales of the month. Let's do the fun ones and look at the highest sales of the month of December for the entire city of Cape Coral. All right, the highest sales of the month of December 2025 for the entire city of Cape Coral. We'll start off with the highest condo sale. The highest condo sale that was on the market is a little bit different. There was a couple of sales that transferred that were for sale by owners that transferred off market. I'll tell you about those in a minute because they were well up north of $2 million a piece. But let's talk about this one. The highest open market sale was 5704 Cape Harbor Drive, Unit 305, there in that beautiful Cape Harbor neighborhood in the Southwest Cape. And this is, they have a couple of high-rise towers in there. These are actually the mid-rise towers. I think they're just 3 or 4 stories high. And this one was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 2004. It was just over 2,050 square feet of living area inside. And they had this thing on the market for a long, long time. It was on the market for a total of 456 days. They started at $850,000, finally got it down to $750,000, and they ended up selling all cash for $710,000. So this is a really nice unit that looks over the marina there. It's a little bit dated inside, but it had some incredible marina views. Had a laundry room in the unit, impact windows and doors in there. And, the Cape Harbor has been consistently one of the communities where we've seen some of the highest sales. And so it's no surprising that one of these mid-rise units sold as the highest open market condo sale at $710,000. Congrats to the buyers and the sellers on that one. I will go ahead and mention the 2 off-market sales that happened in Tarpon Point. Of course, Tarpon Point is that extremely high-end, high-rise condo complex over, again, in the Southwest, not too far from Cape Harbor. And two of the penthouse units ended up transferring there, and they were owned by the same person, and I think they were purchased by the same person because they sold on the exact same day. I haven't seen that transfer occur in the tax bill yet, so I'm waiting to see if that one actually was a true arm's length transaction. But two of those penthouses sold for $2.65 million and $3.2 million a piece, and that totals out to about $5.85 million for both of those penthouse units up there. So Tarpon Point continues to be one of the highest priced condo complexes that we have in this entire region down here, and it's just a beautiful community. But we'll see what happens when that transfers on the tax rolls. I have no reason to believe that they didn't sell for that amount, but we'll take a look at that when the time comes. But congrats to the buyers on buying those beautiful penthouse units, and that was pretty incredible. $5.85 million for two of those penthouse units in Tarpon Point. All right, let's get over to the highest non-golf access home. Every month, usually the highest overall sale is almost always a golf access home. So let's look at what the non-golf access homes are selling for, at least on the high side. And this one was a nearly brand new construction, once again in Cape Harbor. This is the part of the community that are the single family homes, and they are behind a gate there in Cape Harbor. Most of them are on the water, but a couple of them are not on the water, and this one was not. 5513 Merlin Drive, Cape Coral. That one was a 3-bedroom plus a den, 3 full bathrooms, built in 2024. Not brand new, but might as well have been brand new. It's really beautiful on the inside. Just over 2,500 square feet of living area in there. Had just a ton of upgrades and really, really nice finishes in there. Beautiful tile roof. Huge outdoor living spaces there. Again, this one's not on the water, but they had a really nice private outdoor living space back there with an outdoor kitchen and a screened pool and spa. So just a really, really beautiful property in a really, really beautiful community. And this one was listed at 1.2955, so $1,295,500. Was only on the market for 53 days and ended up selling for 1.15. And this one was all cash. And once again, we're over there in Cape Harbor. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. 1.15 million was the highest non-golf access home that sold in the month of December. All right, let's get to the biggest one. The biggest one that sold the entire month of December last month was, once again, we're in Cape Harbor, and this one is on the water. This is a golf access home in there in Cape Harbor in one of those same single-family subdivisions of Cape Harbor, 5858 Harbor Preserve Circle. This one was a big property, 5-bedroom, 4.5 baths. It was built in 2013, so not brand new construction, but just under 3,700 square feet of living area, and just had, once again, a beautiful outdoor living space with an outdoor kitchen, just great water and great water views and views of the preserve there behind Cape Harbor. And this one had a really big dock and a lift package. There's a 16,000-pound boat lift that came with this house, and again, a tiled roof, a 3-car garage. Just some really, really nice updates inside, plantation shutters throughout, so impact windows and doors. Just a really, really beautiful home. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. This was listed at $2.39 million. It sold in only 9 days for $2.325 conventionally financed. So a little bit over $2.3 million. That was the highest sale that we saw last month. And again, as we get into kind of our main season, January, February, March, April, we'll inevitably see some higher sales. It almost always occurs in the first 6 months of the year. We'll probably see some that get over $3, maybe $4 million. We'll just have to see what this season holds. But 2.325 was the highest overall sale for the entire month of December for all of the city of Cape Coral. And that takes care of the highest sales of the month. So now let's get into the statistics portion of this video. I'm going to start off, as I always do, with some of the broader overview of the entire residential real estate market. We'll look at those numbers, and then we'll really start to break things down into some different categories. So let's take a look at the overall market. Okay, so once again, this is the entire residential real estate market. This is the stats for everything. And then after this, we'll start to break them down into some different categories. I'm also going to give you a little bit of a recap of what the overall year looked like last year compared to the last few years, because especially in some categories, we had a pretty decently strong year. But let's look at the total number of sales in the entire Cape Coral real estate market last month. And this graph will go back to July of 2023. These are the monthly number of sales. Had an uptick last month, actually. We sold 451 properties, residential properties, in the city of Cape Coral last month. That's up from November's number of 388. But you can kind of see we've had a pretty, at least compared to the last couple of years, we've had a pretty strong summer. You know, typically sales go down in the summertime. A lot of our seasonal residents are, of course, back up north, and so there's not as much activity that's happening in the summer and the fall versus the winter and spring season. So this year, compared to the last couple of years, we've had a pretty strong second half of the year. You know, if we go back to December of 2024, there were only 393 sales. Again, we've had 451 this past month. And if you look even back in December of 2023, there was 426. So this December of 2025 had outpaced the previous 2 years, at least in the month of December. If you want to look at the overall total number of sales that we saw last year in the entire city of Cape Coral for all of 2025, 5,643 residential sales occurred last year. Compared to 2024, we were just 21 shy of the number that we put up in 2021, 2024. 5664 was the number of residential sales in 2024, so we're really only off that pace by about 0.37%. It's pretty nominal. If you go back another year, 2023, we sold 5,680, so we're only at 37 off of that pace. So the demand, if you want to look at it like that, has been very, very consistent for the last few years, in spite of some negative press, in spite of some higher interest rates and things like that. We've basically sold the same number of properties as we have the last 2 years. Now, the inventory has been a little bit higher, especially earlier last year, and we're going to get into that in just a second. And that's why you saw some of the prices start to soften, especially this over the last 12 or 18 months. But as far as demand, there's still the same number of people that are purchasing property down here, that are moving here, that are, buying real estate in the city of Cape Coral. So I think that's a pretty good sign for the overall health of our market. But again, 451 sales in the month of December. Let's look at the median price for those 451 sales. Again, this takes into consideration everything. So these median prices include everything from that $70,000 condo all the way up to that $2.325 million Gulf Access home in Cape Harbor that we saw. So this is right down the middle. And the median price last month was $365,000. And actually, that median price has been up over the last few months. If you take a look at this chart, again, this goes back to July of 2023. It's down a little bit from where we were in November. November was $374,500. We're down again. $365,000 was December's number. But if you kind of look at this chart, the low point on this chart was back in July. It got down to $350,000. So it's been relatively flat, but actually a little bit up from that low point. I don't necessarily think that necessarily means that the prices are on an upswing just yet. But I think it's pretty telling that we've remained pretty consistent for the last 6 or so months. If you want to compare that 365 in December of 2025 to the previous 2 Decembers, December of 2024, the median price was $376,200. So we're only off that mark by about 3%. We've come down about 3% from December 2024. If you want to take it back to December of 2023, the median price was $385,500. So we're down about 5.3% from that, or about $20,500. You kind of have to read between the lines on this a little bit. Obviously, the median price can fluctuate up and down from month to month, but if you look at the overall trend, I think if you want to just kind of take everything into consideration, I think we've had a 2-year price correction of somewhere around 12 to 13% in the overall market. Now we're going to talk about some different categories, and that can be up or down from that. But I think we're somewhere around 12 to 13% in the last 24 months. Prices have come down in terms of the overall market. And, it's just something that needed to happen. Again, we had some inventory issues that we're going to talk about now. Let's take a look at the inventory. The chart that I'm giving you is the total number of actives on the market in any given month. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this number is the number of current active listings right now. It's just any listing that had an active status throughout that month. That's just how they measure these things. So just keep that in mind. But we had 3,495 properties on the market this past month. And again, that's down. That's down from November's number of 3615. But take a look at this chart. I mean, we peaked out. The high point on this chart was back in February of this year. We had 4,977 properties on the market at some point during February. So look at all the progress that we've made in terms of the inventory, getting the inventory down in just the last 11 months since February. We've taken 1,482 properties off the market. That represents about 30% reduction in inventory. So we were a little bit out of control in terms of the inventory back there in February, but boy, have we made such progress in the last 11 months. And you know, really, if you compare the last couple of years, typically you get into November and December and we start to see that inventory climb. It always climbs every year just because, you know, again, the first few months of the year, the first 6 or so months really is our main buying season. And so a lot more people put their properties on the market during that time just because there are more sales happening during that time period. We haven't seen that spike materialize yet. I still fully expect to see it go up a little bit in January, but the fact that, you know, if you look back in the last 2 years from November, December, we had a pretty strong, you know, October, November, December, that inventory started to rise, and we haven't seen that materialize this year just yet. So we'll see what January holds, but tremendous progress has been made on getting some of this extra inventory off the market. If you want to look back to December of 2024, we had 4,119 properties on the market. So we're down 15.1% from where we were this time last year. 624 properties fewer on the market now than there was in December of 24. And you go all the way back to December of 2023, where we weren't really talking about having an inventory issue at that point. There was 3,471 properties. So we're just 24 above that number of December of 2023. So we're only up about 0.7%, less than 1% from where we were in December of 2023, when really nobody had started talking about, you know, us having an inventory problem at that point. So I just think, you know, if you take anything away from this video, it's that we've made such tremendous progress since spring of this past year in 2025. Taking 30% off the market is an extraordinary accomplishment, and I think that's really what's going to turn this market around quicker, especially if you're a seller. You want to see that extra inventory come off the market. I think people were just getting it through their heads finally that, you know, they weren't going to get their sales prices that they were seeing back in 2021, 2022, and so by the time that they kind of figured that out, you know, they realized that if we're not going to get serious about it and drop this price down to where we need to sell it, let's go ahead and take it off the market. And I think that's what a lot of people did. So very strong numbers for inventory in terms of the reduction that we've seen over the last, well, really the last year. So we'll see what January holds next month. Be sure to tune into this, because I think the inventory number that comes in for January will be very telling as to how quickly this market is going to be turning around. But that wraps it up for the overall statistics for the entire residential market for Cape Coral. Let's start to break these down into some different categories, and I always like to start off with the largest category we have here, and that is the non-waterfront single-family homes. So these are single-family homes not on a Gulf access canal, not on a freshwater canal, not on a lake. It's by far the largest category that we have. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, off-water single-family homes. Once again, this is the broadest category that we have, the largest category of real estate that we have here in the city of Cape Coral. We've got a lot of single-family homes in the city, and most of them are not on the water. So let's take a look at the number of sales. Again, this chart goes back to July of 2023. We had 255 sales for off-water single-family homes last month. That's up slightly from November's number of 243. So again, 255. The total number that we had for the entire residential market was 451. So well over half of the entire market were these non-waterfront single-family homes. And once again, we've had a pretty strong second half of the year for 2025. If you look back, you know, 255 sales in the month of December. If you look at December 2024, that number was 275, so a little bit higher that particular month in 2024. And it was even a little bit higher than that in 2023, 312 sales. And, you know, this category, we've seen a fewer number of these sales this year compared to the last couple of years. We had 3,520 total sales for off-water single-family homes in 2025. In 2024, that number was 3,768. So we're down about 248 sales from that pace that was set in 2024. It represents a decline of about 6.6% in terms of the sales volume. And if you look at 2023, that was an even stronger year for this category, 3828 total sales in 2023. So we're about 8% off of that number. I think the reason for that, we've been pretty consistent. The overall market's been pretty consistent from the last 2 years, but I think the reason that we haven't seen as many off-water single-family home sales is because a lot of these that were happening were brand new construction homes in 2023 and 2024, and we're just not seeing as many brand new construction home sales this past year. I think the construction costs have gotten to the point and the resale costs have come down enough to where new construction has a really tough time competing with these resale values. And so these production builders, the D.R. Hortons of the world, the Lennars, big production builders like that just aren't building as many new construction homes. They're not selling as many, and as a result, I think that makes up one of the biggest reasons why you've seen a little bit of a drop-off in terms of the number of sales this past year versus the previous 2 years. But 3,520 total sales last year. Again, December's number was 255. Let's look at the median price for these non-waterfront single-family homes. Median price last month was $335. That's actually identical to what it was in November. It's been pretty flat once again since right around July. July was $335 as well. So the last 6 months, prices have been fairly flat. They ticked up a little bit those, the last couple of months of the summer and into the fall, and then we're right at $335,000 the last 2 months. If you want to take this back and compare it to the last couple of years, the December 2024 median price for this category was $358,000. So we're down about $23,000 off that number. It represents about 6.4% just in the last 12 months. If you go back to December of 2023, that number was $375,000. So we're down $40,000 from that number. Represents a reduction of about 10.7% in the overall pricing. Once again, I think when you're looking at these charts, you kind of have to read between the lines on this. I think this category probably we're pretty close to maybe 12 to 14 to 15% overall for the last 2 years. I think that's kind of what you can safely say the price correction has been in the last 24 months. Somewhere between that maybe 12 and 14% overall. So this category, we've just seen a very gradual decline. I think that's the healthiest thing that you can see for a real estate market is to have a price correction. And again, we needed to have the price correction. Remember, our prices got out of control there a little bit after the pandemic, so we needed something to kind of cool the market down. And for it to happen gradually over the course of a couple of years like this is really the best thing that could have happened versus prices kind of, diving down all at once. It kind of helped to create a little bit more of a soft landing for this particular real estate market. But $335,000 was the median price for non-waterfront single-family home sales last month, and again, that's been pretty flat for the last 6 months. We'll see if that goes in one direction or the other as we get into the busier season of January, February, March, and we'll see what that holds for us. So make sure you tune in every single month so we can see what's going on with those. All right, so let's take a look at the inventory again for off-water single-family homes. Again, this chart goes back to July of 2023, and this represents everything that was on the market in any given month. Anything that had an active status counts as a number towards these numbers. So again, that doesn't mean that we actively had this many properties on the market at any given point during that month. It just means we had that many actives at one point or another. Some of them sold, some of them came off the market, some of them expired, et cetera, et cetera. But take a look at this. The number for December 2025 was 1,900. We had 1,900 actives on the market at some point during December. That's the lowest month that we've had since the very first month on this chart, which was July of 2023. It was just slightly under 1,900 back then. So once again, the high point, when you consider the high point in this chart was just February, just 11 months ago. We've taken almost 30.5% off the market since February. We've taken 830 of these properties off the market in just 11 months, which I think is pretty extraordinary. And once again, as we always usually see, the inventory start to climb back up at this time of the year. We haven't seen that materialized in this category at all. In fact, we have 15 fewer on the market in December versus November. So we haven't seen that consistent annual spike that we see this time of year hasn't materialized yet, and I think that's very important, and we're really going to have to look at what January's number. I still think will probably go up in January, just because I think there's some additional properties coming on the market, getting ready for season here. But usually that's already started to happen at this point in the year, and it hasn't materialized yet. So I think it's a very good sign for our market in terms of the turnaround that we are obviously starting to go through right now. So 1,900 total properties on the market. If you want to look back to December of 2024, we had 2,313 properties. So we're sitting 18% less now than we were this time last year. We have 18% fewer homes on the market than we did last year. If you look back all the way to December of 2023, again, when nobody was talking about us having an inventory issue back then, December of 2023, we had 1,976 properties on the market. So we have 76 fewer properties on the market now versus this time in 2023, or December of 2023, represents about 3.8% less in terms of the overall inventory. So we're officially below 2023 levels in this category. And I just think that's really, really extraordinary. We're going to have to see how much it will go up. If it doesn't go up in January, then that will be a sign that this market is turning around very, very quick. But I fully expect that we'll probably see that inventory tick up a little bit on this report next month. We'll just have to take a look when the time comes. But that's the inventory story on the off-water single-family homes. Tremendous, again, a tremendous amount of progress has been made in the last 11 months on this inventory issue. And at least in this category, we're back under where we were in 2023 during this time. So that wraps it up for off-water single-family homes. Let's get into everyone's favorite category. That's the Gulf access homes. We've got a tremendous amount of Gulf access real estate here in the city of Cape Coral, and let's take a look at the numbers, because we've had a really strong year for Gulf access homes. Okay, Gulf access homes. What do I mean when I'm talking about Gulf access? Again, Gulf, G-U-L-F, not G-O-L-F. Gulf access homes. We've got well over 400 miles of canals here in the city of Cape Coral, if you're not familiar. Most of those are Gulf access, meaning they have boating access out to open water and the Gulf of America. This is really what we're mostly well known for here in the city of Cape Coral. We've got a lot of this type of real estate, and of course everyone loves the boating lifestyle that these Gulf access properties offer, but they also come with a little bit higher price tag. But let's just take a look at the numbers for last month. Again, this is the total number of sales. And as you can imagine, Gulf access homes and condos, those two categories are the most active in the first 6 months of the year. Both categories are very heavily favored by our seasonal residents, and as a result, there's just a lot more purchasing going on in the first 6 months versus the second half of the year. But take a look at this. We had a super strong December for Gulf access home. Again, this chart goes back to July of 2023, but look at that. December month, December of 2025, we sold 88 properties. 88 Gulf access homes were sold last month. That's up from November's number of 58. So very, very high for December. I'm hoping that's a harbinger of things to come for this season. It really feels like Gulf access properties are starting to see a big surge in activity. We'll just have to see if that's just an anomalous month or if something broader is happening with the overall activity. But you compare that 88 properties sold last month to the last 2 years. In December of 2024, we only sold 50. And in December of 2023, we only sold 42. So a very, very strong December. That's really approaching what we see in kind of the middle of the spring when we see the highest number of sales. So I think we had a very, very strong December. But let's look at the overall year for 2025. Again, I just mentioned we had a really, really strong year for Gulf access homes for whatever reason. We sold 905 Gulf access single-family homes in 2025. If you want to compare that to the last couple of years, in 2024, we sold 852. So we sold 51 more in 2025 versus 2024. That represents, if you want to look at it as demand, that represents an uptick in demand of about 6%. And again, you go back to 2023 when nobody was really talking about our real estate market having too much in the way of problems. 2023, we only sold 810 Gulf access homes for that entire year. So we're up about 95 versus that year, 11.7%. So an extraordinary year for Gulf Access Homes. For whatever reason, we just sold a lot more this year than we have the last couple of years. And I just think that's a really, really great sign for this particular segment of the market. But let's look at the median price, because median price tells a little different story. Median price, again, for this chart goes back to July 2023. Median price for last month for those 88 homes that sold was $765,000, and that's a pretty big spike from where it was in November. November was $672,500. Obviously, as you can see from this chart, you know, when we're talking about 40 sales or 50 sales or even 80, 90, 100 sales in any given month, you can see a pretty substantial variance from one month to the next in terms of the median price. Maybe a few more older homes sold in the Southeast one month and a few more newer homes maybe sold in the Northwest and Southwest in the next month. And so that's why you're seeing some of these values go up and down from month to month. If you just want to take them at face value, those $765,000 for December 2025, the December 2024's number was $805. So just taking those numbers, you know, we're about $40,000 less, or about 5% from where we were in December of 2024. If you look at December of 2023, it was $804,000. I think, once again, especially in these categories where you don't have a lot of as many sales from month to month, and that you see that big variance from month to month in terms of the median sale prices, I think you kind of have to read between the lines and average a lot of these out. And in this particular category, I think if you were to average these all out, I think we've had a probable price correction of somewhere between 15 and 17% for Gulf Access Homes over the last 2 years. I think that's what the number would look like if you kind of average these months to month, these variances in the month to months out. We're probably, in reality, the average median price is probably down somewhere in the mid to high sixes. 2 years ago, it was probably somewhat close to $800,000. So I think we've seen a price correction of 15 to 17% over the last 2 years. But again, demand's been up about 6% from where it was in 2024. Let's look at the inventory. Once again, this category is no exception, where our inventory peaked out early in 2025. This is the number of total active listings on the market at any given month, going back to July 2023. And we had 715 properties on the market this past month in December. That's down slightly from November's number of 733. But as you can see, you know, the high point on this chart was April of last year, in 2025. Just under 1,100 properties on the market in April of 2025. So we've taken 381 properties off the market in just 9 months. That represents just under 35% reduction in overall inventory for Gulf Access single-family homes in the city of Cape Coral. And that's just a really tremendous accomplishment. So we've had a higher demand this past year for Gulf Access homes, and at least in the last 9 months, we've seen the inventory start to go down. Again, this category is very active in the first 6 months, so I fully expect we'll probably see an uptick of inventory. When we get to the next month's report for January, we'll just have to take a look, but inevitably it usually goes up around this time of the year. But again, you know, you look at years past, and as we got into October, November, December, that inventory started to spike up, and we haven't seen that materialize yet. It's essentially been flat since August. It's been pretty remarkably consistent, actually a little bit down from August. So we'll just have to see what happens in January. But if you want to look at this from year to year, again, 715 properties on the market in December of 2025. December of 2024, we had 869. So we're still below where we were this time last year by about 17.7%, or about 154 fewer homes on the market now versus December of 2024. And if you look back all the way to December 2023, when again, a lot of folks weren't talking about us having an inventory issue back then, 723 properties on the market. So we're down just 8, just slightly below that number, 1.1. So again, we are currently under 2023 levels for inventory, and I think that's remarkable considering, given where we were back in April of almost 1,100 properties on the market at that point. So I think that's a tremendously good sign for the Gulf Access single-family home market. Again, the sales have been up and the inventory has come down considerably over the last 9 months, and we'll just have to see what the next couple of months bring, because if that demand continues to raise up and we see some really, really strong numbers as we get into season, and that inventory number remains pretty low, there's a case to be made that, you know, the prices could at least flatten out and possibly in the next 6 to 8 months maybe even start to tick back up in this particular category. I don't want to get ahead of myself there, but that's the trend in which it seems like these statistics are heading. That really takes care of Gulf access homes. I'm just going to briefly mention the freshwater homes. Again, most of the canals that we have here in the city of Cape Coral are Gulf access, but we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of miles of freshwater lakes and canals, and they don't have access out to the Gulf. But you know, you can boat in them. A lot of people have pontoon boats and kayaks and jet skis and things like that. They're a lot of fun, and most of them aren't in the AE flood zone, which makes them very attractive. So let's just briefly check the numbers on those. We had 61 freshwater home sales last month. The median price for those 61 sales was $440,000. If you want to take the overall year, we've been really strong for freshwater homes this past year. And, you know, we were strong for Gulf access homes. We've been strong for freshwater homes. I think more and more people are discovering these freshwater homes and finding out that you can have a lot of that waterfront lifestyle without that big price tag that Gulf access homes come with, and without the flood zone issues that a lot of them come with as well. So 2025, we sold 712 freshwater homes last year. That's up considerably from 2024. We sold 581 in 2024. So we're 131 more sales in 2025 versus 2024. It represents an uptick in demand, if you want to call it that, of 22.5%. In 2023, we only sold 515 freshwater homes, so we're up 197 from that year, or about 38.3%. So that's why I say I think a lot of people are discovering these freshwater homes and a lot of what they have to offer. And on average, you know, they're anywhere from $200,000, $250,000 less than, you know, the same Gulf access home, the average Gulf access home. So freshwater is a real favorite of mine, and I love seeing people discover those beautiful freshwater canals, because again, they're a real treasure that we have here in Cape Coral, and not as many people know about them, although that's quickly becoming no longer a secret. So that wraps it up for Gulf access homes and freshwater homes. Let's jump over to condos and townhomes, and then we'll take a look at some vacant lots, and then wrap up with some advice for buyers and sellers. Okay, condos and townhomes. Condos and townhomes, more than any other category, have seen the roughest go over the last couple of years. We've seen the greatest price reduction, overall price reduction in this particular segment of the market, and it's just really kind of taken it on the chin more than any other category. But let's get into the statistics here, because once again, we've had a pretty solid last half of the year for condos. Let's look at the number of sales. Again, the chart goes back to July of 2023. Had a big spike from November to December. December, we sold 47 condos. We only sold 31 in November. If you want to compare that to the last couple of years, you know, December of 2024, we only sold 33 condos and townhomes that month. In December of 2023, we only sold 37. So we're up 20 or so properties, 25 properties compared to where we were the last couple of years. If you want to, the high point on this chart month for every year usually peaks out about March. So we're heading into the season where we sell a lot more condos. This past, March of 2025, we sold 58. March of 2024, we sold 73. So I fully expect that we're going to see some higher numbers in terms of the number of condo sales as we get into the spring. But let's look at the overall year. 2025, we sold 506 total condos and townhomes last year. That's up from 2024's number. We didn't sell as many in 2024. 461, so we're up about 45 compared to where we were in 2024. It represents an increase in demand, if you want to look at it like that, of about 9.8%. And but we are a little bit off of 2023's mark. 2023 is really when condos peaked. The number of sales and the median price for condos got above 300,000 in 2023, and then it's obviously come down since then. But 506 condo sales this past year is nothing to shake a stick at. I think the condo market is very slowly kind of making a turn. But let's look at the median price, because one of the reasons I think the number of sales has been up this year is because the median price has come down so much. But let's take a look at the chart, again, going back to July of 2023. Again, month to month, this median price goes up and down because we're not talking about a large sample size. If you're just talking about 30, 40, 50 properties a month, obviously, if you get a few more expensive sales one given month versus another, that'll kind of spike up and down. But the overall median price for those 44 sales last month, 47 sales, excuse me, last month was $223,000. That's down from November's number. We had a spike in November, $245,000. Before that, the low point on this chart was back in August. We got well below $200,000. It was $187,000 back in August. So it's up from that. But again, I think you have to kind of read between the lines on charts like this. But let's just take it at face value. $223,000. If you look back to December of 2024, that number was $254,000. So we're down about $31,000 just in the last 12 months. That represents about a 12.2% reduction from December 24 to December 2025. If you want to take it back 2 years, December 2023, we were at $267,000. So we're about $44,000 off of where we were back then. It represents a reduction of about 16.5%. But again, you have to kind of read between the lines on these a little bit and kind of average some of these months out because they just go up and down so much because the sample size is not as big. So I think if you did that, if we sat down and kind of averaged everything out, I think we've had a correction in the condo market of about 25% just the last 2 years. 25% is a lot. You know, considering we peaked out in, you know, again in spring of 2023, we've come down 25% since then, basically. And, you know, that kind of needed to happen. We had a few too many condos on the market. They weren't selling as rapidly, although this last year we've had an uptick because the prices have come down a little bit. And, you know, there's a reason for that. I think the biggest problem that condos have had has been the monthly fees have gone up. There's been some legislation put in place that requires certain types of condos to have a certain amount of reserve set aside for structural and engineering surveys and then repairs if they find anything that's needed. Obviously, insurance and costs like that have gone up, and some of the reserves for these condo complexes had been depleted back from Hurricane Ian, so they needed to refund those reserves, and as a result, especially from 2023 to 2024, and to some extent from 24 to 25, we saw a lot of these condo fees go up a fair amount, and I think that's one of the driving reasons why that sort of had to work itself out in the market by having the prices come down on these things when you're talking about affordability. But nevertheless, 25% I think in the last 2 years has been the price correction that we've seen for condos. Let's look at the inventory. Inventory here tells a little bit different story than the last couple of categories we've looked at. We had 449 condos on the market in December. That's down a little bit from November. We had 456, but you can see this chart peaked out in March, and then it came down and then kind of hit the low point in September. And now it's started to come back up again. I think we're probably on an upward trend with the inventory. I think as we get into January, it'll probably pop back up a fair amount. Again, this category and Gulf access homes are the ones that have the strongest number of sales activity in the first 6 months of the year. So we see a lot more properties on the market because there are more sales occurring during that time period. But let's just compare this to the last couple of years. So 449 condos on the market last month. There was 486 on the market back in December of 2024. So we're still down 37, or about 7.6% from where we were this time last year. If you look all the way back to December of 2023, there were only 419 properties on the market. So we're up from that number about 7.2%. So where we've been under 2023 levels in terms of inventory for things like Gulf access, we're actually a little bit above where we were 2 years ago for the condo market. But this chart peaked out back in March. There were 580 properties on the market back in March. So we've taken 131 condos off the market in just that last, 8 months? Just the last 8 months represents about a reduction of inventory of about 22.6% just in 8 months. So we've made considerable progress on that. We've started to kind of pick back up again as we're heading into season here, but hopefully that kind of flattens out and we don't see too big of a spike as we get into January and February. But we'll just keep an eye on the condo market. I'm sure there'll be some more that come available here. But again, we had a pretty strong December for condos, and so hopefully that continues into January, February, and March, and we see some really high sales numbers, and we can kind of beat that inventory number down a little bit as we get into our season here. So that wraps things up for condos and townhomes for the city of Cape Coral for December of 2025. So let's jump over to vacant residential lots, and then we'll wrap up this video with some advice to some buyers and some sellers. Okay, let's talk about vacant residential lots. I'm specifically talking about residential single-family home lots. I'm not talking about duplex lots or commercial lots or anything like that. So I'm just really giving you numbers on lots on which you can build a single-family home, because it's by far the largest category that we have here. The lot market has been sort of the inverse of a lot of the other residential resale markets. Let's take a look at the total number of sales across the months, again going back to July of 2023. So these are the number of sales each month. We sold 78 lot listings last month. That's down from November's number of 88, but take a look at the broader trend over the last 2 years. I mean, the demand for lots has gone down considerably, and I think that entirely has to do with the fact that the production builders aren't building a lot of new construction homes now. They were really the largest driver of lot purchases. Most of the lots that do sell here in the city of Cape Coral are in the northern areas, in the northeast and the northwest, just because that's where the greatest number of available vacant lots are. And the bigger production builders were, in many cases, they might be buying 30, 40 lots in any given month. And so that's a pretty large driver of the total number of sales, and they haven't been buying as many lots lately, and that's why you've seen this broad trend of a decline in the overall numbers of lot sales over the last 2 years. But 78 total residential lot sales last month is the lowest on this entire chart, so lowest going back to July of 2023. And if you look at the overall lot purchases from last year in 2025 total, we sold 1,324 residential lots in the city of Cape Coral in 2025. That's down from 2024's number of 1,880. 1,880 total lot sales in 2024. So we're down 556 lot sales, or about 30% from where we were in 2024. And if you look at 2023's number, we'd sold 2,535 lots back then. So we're down 1,211, or about 48%. We're selling half as many lots in 2025 as we did in 2023. And if I took this chart back even further, I mean, we kind of peaked out in 2021. We had over 6,600 lot sales, residential lot sales in 2021 in the city of Cape Coral. So this trend has been going on for a lot longer than just 2 years. It's really been going on for about 5 or so. And let's take a look at the median price, because median price tells a different story. These lot sales, even though there's a lot fewer of them, they're generally selling for about the same price as they have 2 years ago, as they were 2 years ago. We had kind of a spike this past month. It went up to 54,500. But again, you're talking about not very many lot sales. That'll go up and down. So I fully expect the reason for that spike is just we sold a few more lots down in the southwest or the southeast. Those areas have central utilities already in, and most of them have the assessments already paid off on them. So those lot sales are usually on average going for $90,000 or $100,000 for an off-water residential lot sale in the southeast or the southwest. Whereas if you go up to the northeast and the northwest, they're usually closer to about 40, maybe even a little bit under 40, depending on where it's at. So I think that's why that averages out, closer to usually around 50,000, high 40s is usually where our median price lands. But this has just been, with the exception of a couple of anomalous months like we had this past month, it's generally remained very, very consistent over the last 2 years. Once again, I think if you averaged all these out, we'd probably be somewhere in the high 40s on these lots. But again, if you're looking at a lot in the southwest or the southeast, you can pretty much plan on paying $90,000 or $100,000 for that lot. And if you're looking for the northeast or the northwest, you're probably going to be somewhere around $40,000. So, again, in spite of the reduction in the total number of sales that we've seen over the last 5 years, at least for the last 2 years, the pricing has been pretty consistent. And I think that's just a function of, these lot sellers, a lot of them just, it's easy to leave a lot on the market for a long, long time. Some of these lots have been on the market for 2 or 3 years in some cases. So they're sitting out there on the market for a lot longer, but as long as they're priced in that somewhat reasonable range, eventually they're selling for the same price that they did a couple of years ago. So lot demand's way down, but pricing has been pretty flat for the last 2 years. Let's look at the inventory. Inventory's been kind of flat too for these lots, at least in the last couple of years. We had 2,204 active lots on the market this past month in December 2025. December of 2024, we had 2,223, so just a few fewer this past month versus December of 2024. If you go back to December 2023, 202 lots on the market. So we've got 2 more lots on the market this past month than we did in December of 2023 2 years ago. So it's been very, very flat, especially since the summer of 2023. It's been remarkably flat. You can see the very beginning of this chart in July of 2023. We had a few more on the market at that point, and then it kind of dropped off and remained pretty consistently around that 2,200, 2,300 mark really ever since July of 2023. So the lot inventory flat, pricing has been flat, demand's way down for lots right now just because there's not a lot of new construction happening. Once the resale values kind of catch up to where the construction costs are, we'll see more of that new construction start to resume, and we'll inevitably see a few more lot sales as the production builders get back into building a lot more houses here in especially the northeast and the northwest sections of Cape Coral. But that wraps it up for the residential lot market, and that wraps it up for all of the statistics portion of this video. So let's finish up by giving you some advice if maybe you're a current buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, as well as some advice if you're maybe a seller in the current Cape Coral real estate market. Let's get into that. All right, if you're a buyer in the current Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you and what do you need to be paying attention to based on my nearly 20 years of being a full-time real estate broker here in this city? Well, if you've paid any close attention to these monthly videos, you've known that the buyers have been really in control of this market for the last couple of years. It's been a very healthy buyer's market. We've seen prices come down, in some cases like condo, as much as 25% over the last couple of years. So you've really been in the driver's seat. Especially this past 12 months. A lot of the reduction in pricing that we've seen, the majority of it has happened in the last 12 months, and that was really predominantly driven by the exceptionally high inventory numbers of active listings that we had on the market at the beginning of last year in 2025. That inventory kind of peaked out around February, and it's come down in remarkable quantity since then. Depending on the category, it's come down as much as 30-35%. Just since February of 2025. So the inventory numbers have been very, very low, and we really haven't seen, annually we always kind of see a spike in inventory as we get into the first part of the year, and at the end of the, usually at the end of the year that starts to happen. We haven't seen that materialize yet. We haven't seen that inventory start to head back up. I fully anticipate we'll still see those numbers kind of creep up as we get into next month's report. But for all intents and purposes, I don't think we're going to hit those high numbers that we saw last year, especially considering we haven't really seen that uptick start to happen just yet. So it inevitably will probably go up as we get into January. Make sure you tune into these reports every month so you can see what's going on. But I think that's the broader sign of the trends right now is heading in the direction that this market is turning around sooner than later. If our inventory remains low and our demand remains consistent, so again, our demand has been very, very consistent for the last 2 years. We've sold just about as many properties last year as we did in 2024 and 2023. So we haven't really had a demand issue. We've had an inventory issue, and now that inventory issue is kind of being solved. And as we get more towards that equilibrium, we're going to see prices level off, and inevitably they'll start to go up eventually. So I think if you were sitting on the sidelines as a buyer, for the last couple of years and you're kind of waiting to time this bottom of this market out a little bit, I think we're pretty much about there. Again, we'll have to keep an eye on what happens, but when you're trying to time the bottom of the pricing bottom of these markets out, usually by the time you realize that it's bottomed out, it was a couple of months back and you've missed that complete bottom. So usually the pricing is the last thing to kind of turn around, and it's the last thing to let you realize that the market has turned around. So I think we're pretty much there. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for a good time to buy real estate here in the city of Cape Coral, now's the time. If you've watched these videos, I haven't necessarily said that on these reports. So this is not a sales pitch by any means. I just think based on the statistics and the trends that I've seen doing these videos every single month, we're really starting to get to that point where it looks like things are turning around, and that's really good for sellers. But the buyer, as a buyer, your window is now starting to close, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you buy on the upswing either. The long-term prospects for the city of Cape Coral, we have our area, Cape Coral in Southwest Florida, and the area right outside of Orlando have the two largest population increase projections over the next 10 years. So I think the long-term prospects for this market is going to be very, very good. So no matter if you try to time that market out and you get at the exact bottom, or if you catch it on the upswing, I think in the long term you're going to be just fine, and you're going to be making a pretty solid financial decision, because people still want to be here in Southwest Florida. It's January, it's the first week of January, and it's it's upper 70s, low humidity, and the sun's shining, a little breeze going on right here, and I get to work on my pool deck today. So people want to be here. They're always going to want to be here. We've got the sun, we've got the waterfront, we've got the beautiful climate in the winters, and there's still going to be a healthy demand for people moving to this area. So I think long-term prospects for this area are very, very good. But once again, if you've been kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting for the market to turn around, I think we're about there. If you've been waiting for maybe mortgage interest rates to go down, I'm not really sure that they're going to go down too much more, at least not in the near term over the next year or so. We'll have to see. But nevertheless, if you are in the market to buy something here in the city of Cape Coral, get a hold of me. Of course, my contact information is right there on the screen. You can call, text, or email me anytime. Love to hear about your individual situation and the type of property that you're looking for, so I can help point you in the right direction and get you on the right foot, and help you navigate some of the more nuanced things that we have here in the city of Cape Coral, like flood insurance and the utility assessments and all those fun things. So by all means, get a hold of me, call, text, email me anytime. I would love to hear from you. But that's my advice for buyers. I mean, the trends are heading in the direction that seems like this market has kind of made a turn. And pricing I don't think is going to go up overnight. If anything, it'll be a little bit flat for a while. But as long as the inventory doesn't spike up, and I don't think it will be at this point, I don't think it will be spiking up at this point, at least not too much in the next 6 months or so. I think that pricing will flatten out, and I think inevitably it'll start to go back in the upward direction eventually. So get a hold of me. We'd love to hear from you. But that's my advice for buyers, at least as it sits right here in January 2026. Okay, so if you're a seller in the current Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to based on my almost 20 years as a full-time real estate broker here in the city of Cape Coral, where it's been a tremendous buyer's market really for the last couple of years, and you've really been on your back foot as a seller for the last couple of years, and that was mainly driven by our inventory issues. We haven't necessarily had a demand issue. As you saw in this report, our demand has remained fairly consistent over the last couple of years. We've seen the same number of sales, depending on the category, about the same number of sales in 2025 as we saw in 2024 or 2023, and in some categories, we've seen a little bit more properties sell this past year versus previous years. So it's not necessarily a demand issue. It's always been about the inventory, and the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this video is inventory has dropped significantly since early 2025, depending on the category. About February or March is when the inventory kind of peaked out and the levels were sort of unmanageable. But ever since then, in some categories we've come down 35%, but usually it's somewhere around 25 to 30%. The inventory has been taken off the market since the first quarter of last year in 2025. So that's a remarkable achievement that absolutely needed to happen to have our market finish this particular buyer's market cycle out and inevitably start to turn around. I think we're about there. I haven't been able to say that on these videos for a long, long time. I think I started doing these videos in late 2023, mid 2023. I don't think I've said that on this video. I don't think there's been as much light at the end of the tunnel for sellers as there is right now, at least, excuse me, at least in terms of the near-term outlook. I don't necessarily think that if you wait around 6 months, you're going to get a better price for your property. But if anything, we've kind of staved off the bleeding of some of this price correction that we've seen over the last 12 or 18 months. And eventually this market's just going to turn around, and we're heading in that right direction. All of the metrics are pointing to this market kind of flattening out and starting to head in the other direction. So as long as we keep the inventory down, I fully expect we'll probably see some inventory pick up as we get into January. That just happens every year. But the biggest thing that we've seen on this report for December's number is we haven't seen that spike in inventory materialize yet. Usually as we get into October, November, December, the inventory starts to pick up as we get ready for season. Haven't seen that happen yet. I still think it's going to happen to some extent in January. But at least right now, I don't think we're going to even get close to where we were in terms of the inventory levels that we saw in early 2025. And to me, that suggests that this particular market cycle is making a turn. So I think if anything, prices will probably continue to be flat. It's still very, very important more than anything to price your property right. But I'm still selling a lot of listings. A lot of my listings, I'm fortunate to have some sellers that will kind of listen to what I have to say and get their property priced right. And as long as we're pricing those properties right, we're getting a lot of activity out there and we're selling these homes. So more than anything, you need to price your property right. And then it goes without saying that, you need to be a really, really good looking house. I mean, if your property's listed, the first 5 seconds of that buyer walking through the front door is the most crucial. So make sure that property looks tip top on the drive up. Make sure that property looks good and maybe more importantly smells good as you walk in that front door in that first 5 seconds, because these buyers there's still enough inventory out there that they've really got a pretty solid choice out there, and that first 5 seconds is just so crucial because they're going to have either a negative first impression or a positive, and it's really hard to change that once that first impression has been made. So make sure your property is looking tip top, but more than anything, you just got to price it right. And if you need some help pricing your property right, and you need to see where you need to be at to sell your property in this particular market, call, text, email me. My contact information is right there on the screen. I'd love to take a look at the numbers on your specific property and tell you where we would need to be to get that property sold in this market. But if you are sitting there as a seller and maybe you can hold on for another year, I think you might be in a pretty good situation, a little bit better situation in terms of the market value of your property in 12 months from now. I still think it's going to be fairly flat this season. We could be surprised. I mean, the median price, overall median price has been flat for the last 6 months. So we could see that to start to tick back up sooner. I'm not super confident of that, but I think if anything, it will remain fairly flat for at least the next 6 months or so. But if I had to pick one side or the other, I think there may be a little bit chance of it going higher versus a chance of going lower in the next 6 months. So, it's still important to price your property right, but as long as you get that property price right, you can sell it, because there's still plenty of demand here, still plenty of people that want to be here in the sunshine and the fun waterfront and wonderful climate that we have here in Southwest Florida. So people are always going to want to come here. We're just going through a market cycle right now, and really we need to, because, come 2020, 2021, you were really in the driver's seat there, and your property value saw a pretty strong increase if you owned a property back then. And this market just needed to cool off, and luckily for us, it did so over the course of about 2 years, rather than just kind of cratering all at once. So it kind of gave us a little bit of a soft landing, but nevertheless, we're still in a buyer's market, and so you need to price your property right, and need to make sure you get out in front of the other inventory that still is out there, because there's still a fair amount out there in spite of the reductions that we've seen in the last 11 months or so. So give me a call, shoot me a text. Would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your property. I'll let you know what the numbers look like, and you can make an educated choice as to whether or not you want to go ahead and try to sell that in today's market. But we'd love to hear from you. Thanks. All right, so let's summarize the Cape Coral real estate market as it sits right now in January 2026. If you didn't want to watch that hour-plus content that I just gave you of all of the nitty-gritty information and statistics, let me just give you the Cliff Notes version of what's going on here in the Cape Coral real estate market. The biggest takeaway from this video I think that you should have is the sheer number of inventory that has come off the market in the last 11 months. Our inventory kind of peaked out in around, depending on the category, February, March of 2025. And ever since then, it's come down, in some cases, as high as 35%. We've taken over a third of the available properties off the market since then, and that really needed to happen. But I think it was a shock to a lot of us just how quickly that materialized. I think we were thinking that this particular market cycle might drag out a little bit longer, but I think maybe some of the negative press that we saw in the middle of last year really got it through some sellers' heads that there wasn't really a hope of getting the number that they thought they were going to get based on 2022's number or 2021's number, and that the market had corrected enough to where they need to make a decision on whether to either price that property right or go ahead and take it off the market and wait this market cycle out. And I think a lot of those folks made that choice to go ahead and take it off the market. The bigger thing is, for the last 2 years, as we got into October and November, the inventory naturally goes down every year after we get really past May and June, starts to go down for the rest of the year. And then as we get towards the end of the year, it starts to pick back up as everybody's getting ready for the busier winter and spring season after the first of the year. The last couple of years, October, November, we've seen that increase start to happen. It hasn't materialized yet this year. I fully expected that we would see inventory go up in December. It has not. It went up a little bit for, I think, condos, but the overall market and a lot of the other categories, we haven't seen that uptick in inventory materialize yet. I still think we're going to see some as we get into January, but what it suggests to me right now is, we're not going to get close to the high point that we saw in terms of the inventory that we were at back in the inventory levels that we were back in, February of 2025. So we're not going to hit those high points. And to me, that suggests this market has turned around. It's been a strong buyer's market for the last couple of years, particularly in the last 12, 18 months. Prices have gone down the fastest. But, in some categories in the overall market, we've seen median price be very, very flat for the last 6 months. And I think that really is an indication of this market leveling out. And eventually it'll level out enough to where it starts to head up in the other direction, as long as the inventory remains low and the demand remains relatively high, or at least stable. And demand has been stable for the last couple of years. We've sold about the same number of properties this past year in 2025 as we did in 2024 and 2023. So we haven't had a demand issue, we've had an inventory issue, and a lot of that inventory issue has been solved in the last 11 or so months. So that suggests to me that the market is slowly turning around, and I think pricing will still be relatively flat. It's still very important as a seller to price your property right and make sure everything looks good with it, because there's still a fair amount of inventory out there. But we're heading in the right direction for this market this market cycle to finish out and kind of make a turn. I think that's very hopeful if you're a seller in this market, if you're a buyer in this market. If you've maybe been sitting on the sidelines waiting for these signs to happen that the market is bottoming out, I think we're pretty much there. So, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you catch the market on the upswing, but if you're somebody that was really trying to time the low point for these median prices, I think we about hit it. And I still think pricing will be fairly flat. I don't think we're going to see increases over the next maybe 6 months. We'll just have to see. I was surprised that the inventory hasn't ticked up at this point yet, so I could be surprised by seeing that median price start to rise in the next 6 months. But I think we'll be fairly flat as this market cycle finishes out, and then we'll slowly start to see that turn back in the other direction. And particularly if we do something crazy like eliminate property taxes, even for folks like primary residents or something like that, that's going to price itself out in the market one way or the other. And the way that it's going to do that is the market value. So if you create more affordability for people here, you artificially create more demand. Inventory, if it stays low, that equilibrium won't be there, and our pricing will start to rise again. So that might happen later in 2026. We'll just have to see if they get a ballot initiative put together for it. But overall, I just think the market is a very healthy market. The correction that we've had has been very gradual, and I just think that's a really good sign of a healthy real estate market. And I think we'll continue to be a very healthy real estate market here, because everybody wants the sunshine and the waterfront and the wonderful climate that we have here, at least in the winters and the spring. So still going to be plenty of demand, plenty of people that want to be down here. That's not going to be an issue that we have in that regard. It's just a matter of getting some of this extra inventory off the market, and we've done a lot of that at this point. So I'm very hopeful for this real estate market. Again, if you're a buyer, you may want to kind of look at pulling the trigger sooner than later. If you're a seller, maybe hold on for another year if you can. I think you'll be in a better spot next year. But if you do need to sell, at least the inventory issue is not what it was this time last year, and you can feel a little more confident as long as you get your property priced right that you'll be able to sell that. So whether you are a buyer or a seller, get a hold of me. Contact information's right there on the screen. Call, text, or email me. I'd love to hear about your specific situation and let you know how I can help you out and get you pointed in the right direction on that. But beyond that, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I know these are extremely dry videos, extremely long videos, but hopefully you got a lot out of this. If you did get some insights out of this, do me a favor and hit the like button, just because it helps me out, helps the channel out. Make sure also you're subscribed, if you're not subscribed. I do, again, one of these videos every single month, but these are in addition to the weekly videos I put out, and I just really try to solve a lot of problems for you, give you a lot of really great information. I've found that if I can do that, then I'll be successful, and a lot of you folks will reach out to me and use me when it comes time to buy or sell something. I would love to hear from you, so by all means reach out. But beyond that, thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video here in just a few days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.